you very much. And I was going to just go off of what the chairman was just discussing. I think the shipbuilding disparity is real. I mean, certainly our Navy is the strongest in the world, and we're proud of that. But the disparity is decades and decades in the making. And I think it's important to note that one of the real issues is that China produces about 1,000 commercial cargo vessels per year. And that's on the commercial side. And so the commercial capacity that China then exports to countries across the world, and we see these ships, by the way, you go to any port along the Pacific, whether it's my port in Long Beach and Los Angeles, or it's the ports of Seattle, or anywhere else, even down through Mexico, or ports that go onto other parts of the world, across Asia, and most of the ships in the world are actually built by China. And so I think it's important to note that what the shipbuilding does is it provides China with a capacity to then actually streamline their shipbuilding on the military side. And because the United States over many decades has decreased their focus on shipbuilding as an economy, that has allowed China, over the last 40, 50 years to be the world's producer, essentially, of cargo ships on the commercial side. And I will note, having had the Port of Long Beach as mayor in the city, that, in my opinion, Chinese commercial ships are of less quality and less kind of climate or less focused on climate and some of the other goals as ships that might be produced, for example, in Korea and other places across the world, or the work that we're doing in the U.S. I just want to note real quick for both the admirals, what's the current maximum capacity for military shipbuilding in the U.S.?
Sir, we're engineers on this side of the table, so we're currently calculating how to best.
I mean, is around 10? Is that sound right? Sound about right?
Yeah, if you look at the surface shipbuilding budgets, routinely we're somewhere in the vicinity of 7 to 9 ships requested per year.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Which is a good indication.
Sir, it's certainly, it's also has to be kind of a yard-by-yard answer, our nuclear shipyard capability, large amphibious ships, right? So it's a rough range, but certainly, you kind of have to look class by class as well.
I think that sounds right. And what do you think are the most important steps that Congress could take to actually build shipping capacity?
So, as I mentioned, our fiscal year 24 budget has the quantity of ships we need, we believe we need operationally and to maintain the industrial base. There's also funding in there that helps us to expand the workforce. One of the real challenges we have in this country is availability of blue-collar labor. And we saw that as a challenge as we were in COVID and came out of COVID, and we continue to struggle to identify talent to come in, people who are interested in the blue-collar trades. So support of our budget requests that provide funding to develop the workforce. That comes in 2 ways. The submarine industrial base, which I mentioned earlier, has targeted funds to help advance the workforce. Additionally, last year in the NDAA, Section 122 provided a requirement for the Navy when awarding shipbuilding contracts in the future to fund a percentage of the overall cost of the ship to go towards workforce development items. Those are helpful.
Sir, if I might add.
Yeah, briefly, yes, sir.
I mean, first of all, your points about China's capacity are certainly correct, as Admiral Anderson discussed. The U.S. Navy's approach is to focus on not just the capacity, but also the capability and the readiness. And so that's the way we're approaching it. From what can we do to help, certainly anything that we can do to strengthen our industrial base to meet our current demand and to surge if we need that to happen. The Navy tries to do stable planning, efficient acquisition. That's why we ask for things like multi-year procurements in certain programs, Congress's support of those. For example, and just to reiterate Admiral Anderson's, to invigorate shipbuilding as a profession in the United States.
Absolutely.
With young people
And let me just, to wrap up, just how many times almost up here, and I agree completely with both of you, and I just want to remind the committee that, that there is synergy between the commercial side of shipbuilding and what we're able to do on the military side. And because the United States for the last generation has essentially withdrawn from shipbuilding as a major source of manufacturing jobs, that does impact, while, of course, China has ramped up those efforts. So I want to thank you both for your answers.
Congressman Dunn. I'm sorry. Congressman Higgins.